in my opinion, one of the biggest challenges with climate tech is often the investment or payback returns are not as good as other deals. And so it just doesn't attract enough capital to really see the amount of sustainable change. And I have a belief, I don't know if call me like a climate capitalist, but I believe that like profitability within these businesses is so paramount.
Welcome, everyone, to the Tech Business Roundtable Podcast show. This is a podcast show dedicated to shining a spotlight on tech innovators, entrepreneurs, founders, and the compelling narratives behind the movements they've established. I'm your host, Ryan Davies, and I'm hosting today's discussion on driving growth for good, unleashing sustainable innovation with Nick Findler. Nick, thank you so much for being here today and for imparting your wisdom on our audience today.
Well, thanks for having me, Ryan.
I am super excited to dive into this one. A little bit about Nick for our audience. So he has consistently championed a vision for a cleaner, brighter future and is the driving force behind Climate Door, which is a pioneering global growth as a service firm. Nick's commitment to the green movement is evident in every venture, strategy, and initiative that he undertakes. And under his guidance, Climate Door has flourished with his adeptness in green finance and enabling the securement of over $100 million for transformative global ventures. He's got a very vast and varied entrepreneurial canvas from the inception of Stardust Solar to strategic roles at Forest Innovations and other ventures. Really, his footprint in the sustainability sector is profound, and each of these endeavors has been marked by a shared goal of accelerating the world's transition to clean energy. I think we could go on and on, but me probably talking about it does it no justice in comparison to what you could bring to the table for our listeners. So maybe to kick things off, a little bit of a brief overview on your journey and how you became so deeply involved in the green movement and sustainability efforts.
Yeah, well, I hope you can give me an intro every time I get on any meeting, because that was probably the best intro I've ever had.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you set me up for no, it's all good. My entrepreneurial journey started quite early. Always was selling or learning how to flip things, and so my first time I made money in sort of an entrepreneurial way was selling golf balls I'd found in the hazards at golf courses on weekends, and that became pressure washing and selling different sporting equipment. And so that was sort of always had the entrepreneurial drive and hustle, and just always wanted to learn new skills, and saw myself as sort of becoming a venture capitalist, sort of business owner, having a portfolio of companies at pretty young age, and then just sort of tried to make the steps towards that. And so, over the last decade now, have worked with well over 20 companies, and have in most cases been part of their strategic leadership team or been part of founding them, and often being tasked with the role of making sure that they've got enough funding to get to the next level. I've taken a number of companies public, and really sort of got into sort of deal making and how to grow businesses from a pretty young age, and started raising capital for deals. And through that process, through my 20s, I found that I really gravitated towards the good for the planet and good for humanity type investment opportunities and companies that I was building or I was partner with within building. And really decided, I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago, that I was going to go all in on these types of businesses. Because before I had done some food technology companies. I'd worked a bit in different types of energy deals, and really just found that what I felt passionate about getting up to work as hard as I do every day is to sort of focus on businesses that were going to make a sustainable difference. And so that was really the impetus for getting into building Climate Door now with my partner Chad and the rest of our amazing team.
Incredible. And I think, it's such a amazing in tech on its own. Is one thing. Really, green innovation is a whole nother fantastic area to be in. You're combining these together, and you describe Climate Door as a growth as a service firm. So I'd love to have you elaborate a little bit more on that unique approach and how you contribute to the growth and sustainability ventures and initiatives that you do.
Yeah. So growth as a service is very core to what we do and what we bring to businesses. So you can think we consider ourselves a climate venture builder. So we partner with great, or we'll incubate them ourselves, great early stage businesses in the climate space. And that what our value add we bring is what we call growth as a service. And so we bring more investors to the table. We bring more government money to the table. We help these businesses often find their first customers and first investors, and then also identify strategic partners and make that happen. So, our best clients are ones that have great solutions or innovations and leadership, but don't have a sales and marketing and finance and fundraising team. And so that's a big part of our business is really becoming real partners in those businesses. And really helping them elevate. And so when I decided to stop working with all different types of businesses, but just focus on climate businesses, the main reason, outside of sort of the humanitarian and environmental aspect was being able to build a suite of tools and technology to really help amplify these businesses. I identified, in my opinion, one of the biggest challenges with climate tech is often the investment or payback returns are not as good as other deals. And so it just doesn't attract enough capital to really see the amount of sustainable change. And I have a belief, I don't know if call me like a climate capitalist, but I believe that like profitability within these businesses is so paramount to making really like significant sweeping change across the value chain rather than moving something from 5% of the grid to 10% of the grid. Like, how do we get to 80% of the grid? And I think it's through unit economics. And so we really spend a lot of time focusing on how to use AI and how to build, newsletters to attract investors. Like, how do we help companies tell their story better? We really take a holistic approach to that whole component of the business. And so that's our bet, is that if we can make these early stage companies in the climate space more de-risked and more investable, that we've provided a valuable service. And we love being partners, and really we're roll up our sleeves type of team. We all absolutely love what we do, and you can email us on Saturday or Sunday and we'll be at it. And so yeah, that's kind of the vibe of what Climate Door is.
I love it. And I think as a leader in the green tech space, you're probably very well positioned to speak about, maybe the key driving forces that are shaping the industry's future, and maybe how Climate Door is also positioned to help address these forces.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question.
Yeah. We could that alone is a whole podcast probably series, right? So yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think that the answer is like, I often say there's no silver bullet. There's just a million BBs, or I don't think there's one technology or one solar or wind that's gonna be the answer to solve everything. I don't think it'll be a medley of all different types of technology that are really advancing at a great rate, and we're seeing that in solar. One of our portfolio companies is a solar franchising business, and we've just seen absolutely tremendous inbound growth because that sector is growing fast. It's really only, I think, 1.5% penetrated in Canada and less than 3% in the US. And so I think you're going to start to see, if you look at that over a 10-year time horizon, like, is that number significantly larger than 1.5% and 3%? Like, I'm a betting man, and I would say yes. And so how do you make how do you do that in wind? How do you do that in battery storage? How do you do that in hydrogen? There's a lot of talk happening in hydrogen right now, and we just got back from COP28, which is the large UN climate change conference, and it's expected that there's actually 100,000 people there this year, which is incredible. And so I guess I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, I think I think that's absolutely perfect. That in the key driving forces is the fact that, there is no one key driving force. It is forces plural, and there's really, like you said, there's headway to be made any direction you go, as long as you're following the right pathways, and being able to understand that. And for our tech business audience, maybe we can talk a little bit as well about integrating sustainability and green initiatives into core strategies and operations, and how you're seeing, both businesses in there and external trying to bring it in, be successful in doing so.
Yeah. I think you brought up a really good point that I wanted to go back on.
Sure. Yeah.
Is I think that the industry is so nascent and so young, and in my opinion is going to create such massive economic change over the next 50 to 100 years that one thing that we say internally is that collaboration is the new competition. And so I think that there's so much room to grow. What really, in our opinion, at least for the early stage stuff, is how do you de-risk these? Like, how do you use technology solutions to make them, easier ventures to start, that you don't need to have someone put up a check for $25 million to get you started. Like, that's a hard bar to start a business on. And so, we're seeing a lot of innovation on the technology side, which is really cool. There's lots of interesting accounting softwares out there, carbon counters. Like, there's starting to be some good reporting on it. One of the talks that I went to was put on by S&P Global, and they were talking about how important it is for companies to have great reporting on what they're doing and having it standardized across all businesses.
Yeah.
So that, investors can make decisions, because they're saying not only are the investors not really understanding the sort of carbon math behind, like, how much are we actually doing, they're also facing putting up big dollars into, heavily policy regulated industries that are constantly changing all the time. So from a policy standpoint, there's lots of risk. From the actual impact standpoint, there's lots of risk. And so, coming up with new solutions to help make those sources of information more trusted, to create a more trusting sort of ecosystem to play within, I think is an incredibly valuable role to play. And there's lots of groups that are trying to do interesting things in that space.
And you mentioned before, part of what you're doing is you're in two areas you're trying to bring in that are in the infancy stages, really scratching the surface, between, green tech innovations and AI, and bringing those together. One's highly regulated, one's the Wild West almost, in terms of how it's being brought together and what you can do. Tell me a little bit about what you see in that intersection of technology and sustainability, and kind of maybe either the challenges or the big impacts, that success stories that can come out of that.
Yeah, well, I'll preface my answer with, I'm a non-technical guy that loves technology and has tried to spend, lots of time the last 6 to 8 months to try and understand AI better, and really try to use it as much in my day-to-day work. And so right now I see the biggest advantages of AI and these sort of growth stage technology businesses is really, making the executives in that company much more effective, more output, better quality of work, really sort of understanding problems better, really working as sort of a co-pilot alongside your staff.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been able to sort of do that at the leadership level, sort of the rest of the business's level, but also even outsourced staff and contractors that we hire, creating, AI technologies to make them more efficient with their time, be able to, create better work for, less input. Because essentially that's what we're trying to get for these businesses, just more leverage on their capital and the ability to de-risk themselves more. And so, that's where we're seeing big use cases. I think that in 12 months from now, we'll be having much different conversations about the different problems and different sort of abilities AI has to impact these businesses. But I think as a co-pilot and sort of a work productivity and output quality of work hacker, I think is here to stay, and it'll be interesting to see what it can do next.
And I think, you touched on it there a little bit about making the most of your capital and being able to, make it make sense. Again, I think in this space, you've got a really unique sense of not just either bootstrap capital or venture capital, but government funding comes into this as well, right? There's got to be a lot of that kind of goes into this and becomes a big player in growth strategies and being able to navigate those waters. So, if you could touch on that and kind of shed a little bit of light about that from your perspective as well, that'd be great.
Yeah, government funding is a huge part of the sector right now. So my business partner, Chad, who we grew up together, he really comes from sort of the government world as well as sort of a background in international markets. And so right now it is a huge part of every sustainability companies or company that's in the climate economy strategy is how to sort of get their hands on some of those dollars. And so, it's something that, that we try to bring as much as we can to our businesses. It's also in a lot of cases what we call blended finance. So you're getting some equity investment or some debt investment that unlocks some other investment from the government. So there's these matching fund opportunities, and there's really there's lots of funding to hire sort of good young talent that's just entering the workforce. So there's really a lot of opportunities to use government funding, but again, going back to, I think that's where this industry needs to go, is to find solutions that don't need to be propped up and aren't reliant on sort of government cycles and capital. And so we try to make our businesses as self-reliant as we can, but we'll take any extra help from the government that we can get.
Absolutely. And, maybe we could even highlight one or two. I know on the Climate Door website, you've got a number of case studies, a number of impact stories that you've had. But is there one or two, transformational ventures that you would say that you've been involved in, and like how the initiatives really align with the vision of a cleaner, brighter, better future?
Absolutely. Yeah, the two that come to mind, one being a great business that I sort of mentioned briefly earlier called Stardust Solar. And so we're a homegrown solar training and education business that morphed into a franchisor about 2.5, 3 years ago. And has spread really quickly across Canada, and now has just signed a new deal to go into the US. So they've got, in just 2.5 years, I think going to be approaching 72 franchisees here shortly, which is been an awesome growth.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's really been incredible, and run by a great team and a great CEO, Mark Tadros. And so we've been heavily involved in that company and big shareholders for over 2 years now. And so we're actually just getting ready to IPO, and so we'll likely see our IPO happen in Q1 of 2024, which is really exciting to see, and just tremendous growth and just a great operator and a great team. So that's been really exciting. And then a more recent one that we've started, we partnered with about 7 or 8 months ago, it's actually called Polar Beer Taps. And so you might be asking, like, beer and sustainability. So this local team here has built a beverage cooling technology. It's a stand-up machine that you can wheel into an event or to a wedding or to a concert, or it'll fit in a restaurant sink as well. And they've come up with a way to cool any type of liquid, specifically beer, that runs through a keg immediately. And the keg does not need to be cold. It doesn't need to be settled after driving. And so it's this really big breakthrough, especially in the event space, where companies really struggle to pour cold drinks at any type of event. So they often just bring cans, which is not only twice the financial cost, but it's 5 times the environmental cost. Or they're using these things like the kegerator, which is a glorified Coleman cooler with some coils in it. But you're having to use hundreds of dollars of ice. And there's really not only are they struggling to get cold beer to their consumers, or cold drinks or wine or whatever the beverage may be, these are also massive polluters. And these events, worldwide, governments have recognized that events and concerts and weddings and all these types of things are so important for our society and keeping us connected, but they're huge polluters. And so this machine that's been created is created by this really incredible team here in Vancouver. And it for every keg of beer poured through a polar beer tap system saves the CO2 equivalent of a car driving down the road 5 kilometers. And so we've been able to really cut out a lot of the sort of energy efficiency and needing any ice and needing kegs to be cooled and things to be transported to really make it an efficient solution, both for the environment and for event goers that like to have a cold beverage every once in a while.
Holy cow. Well, you had me at cold beer, and then you ramped it up to another level when you started putting some of those figures and facts where like the impact that it has. And just I think that's what's so fascinating about this space is, like you said, it can be very profitable, and it can also be such a fantastic lasting legacy impact in the technologies, and they span so many areas that you would never think of. That's not where I would like you said, that is not where I'm thinking when people go, oh, green tech, yeah, how have you thought about cold beer? And it's like, well, I have, but not in green tech. Just I think about it a lot. That's about it. So that is absolutely incredible.
I didn't imagine us doing a company that beer was in the name, and about when we saw this thing and really started punching the numbers on it and started understanding what is being used in the market right now and how wasteful it really is, and then comparing it to the service, it was like, wow, this is not only an incredible ingenious design to pour cold beverages, which is every beer company and beverage company's desire at these events. It also has a huge environmental benefit to doing it this way. And so it probably gives you an idea of sort of where we're looking for interesting solutions. We're relatively agnostic into sort of what particular sector, but we have sort of our core tools that just having a good founding team is really probably the most important thing we're looking for, and that that we work well together and jive together, because you're going to be in these things for multiple years often, and you want to make sure you enjoy who you're working beside.
Right. Yeah. No, I think as we're kind of pivoting towards and working towards the outro here, and I think again we could have a whole series on this alone, just you and I, because there's just so much to cover here. But looking ahead, crystal ball, looking forward, the vision for sustainable technology, there's no getting around it or away from it or anything. Like, this is, like you said, it's just scratching the surface, but this is not a trend. It's not something that's just kind of popping up. This is something that is going to dominate the technology space for years and decades to come. Give me what your vision for the future of sustainable technology is, and even what businesses like Climate Door will do playing in that space and helping shape that future.
Another big question.
Massive, right? Again, it's a whole nother podcast, right?
I believe it. If you solve the biggest problem, you're going to create the biggest outcome. And I think that people are starting to see, not only is this a gigantic problem for humanity, it's starting to become a space where, the people that, are in their 20s and 30s have had a different relationship with the planet than a lot of our parents and a lot of the sort of elder generation had. And so I'm seeing more and more of the smartest, because that's what you need. You need the sort of combination of the right people, the right capital, the right environment, the right technology to really create sustainable change. And so I think we're starting to see that. We're starting to see more action and not just conversations at conferences about what we should be doing. And I think technology plays a massive role in it. And so we're creating a platform that'll be very AI enabled to connect climate executives of growing climate businesses with investors and strategic partners and buyers and champions that want to be part of what they're doing, and maybe hire people as well. And so I think technology plays a key role in connecting the right people, because the world is vast. And so being able to connect the right person from Sri Lanka with the right entrepreneur in India, or connecting some three-way amalgamation of businesses together that need each other's solutions but don't know each other exists. I think those use cases for technology are going to be paramount over the next few years. And also the use of data. I think technology and data, are where, being able to create actionable insights for businesses on how to be more sustainable is an incredibly powerful tool, and that I think will be essential in every single business in 10 or 20 years. And so I think that those working on those types of problems are going to do really well.
Amazing. So I'm going to leave it to you with this before we kind of get to our last little piece, is just sort of any final thoughts, any calls to action, or anything you'd like to leave our audience with, particularly those just like you that are passionate about sustainability in the tech sector.
I think just go out and just go out and start acting. You can start at a very localized level. I think it is really just a game of action and finding good people that want to work on important problems. And if it's something that you feel passionate to, there's so many ways to enter the market. There's a lot of subsidies for government or for companies to hire you. And there's a lot of opportunity for other entrepreneurs that want to build new tools. And so I just encourage you to go out and act and be part of the solution, because we're not achieving our climate goals at this point. We're actually lagging quite far behind even what we had set out just 4 or 5 years ago. No. And it needs more smart people and more capital to go into that sector to solve a problem where we won't have a habitable place to live. And so that's just the reality.
Fantastic. And as we're signing off here with Nick Findler, Nick, how can our audience get in contact with you, learn more from you, tap you on the shoulder for that advice or that push that they need to jump into that space, as you mentioned?
Yeah. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. So Nick Findler, so Nick and then Findler. I'm very accessible. I'm sure you can find me. And then we've also, if you just reach out and say hi, you can also get on our sort of newsletter and network where, we share sort of our own insights from what, we're learning sort of every week, and the insights of sort of what some announcements mean for the climate economy, and really looking at it through sort of an opportunity lens of, how do we get more involved? How do we find the right companies to partner with? How do we see new opportunities from changing regulations to start new things? And so that's what we really care about.
Fantastic. Well, with that, Nick, I'm gonna sign off here and say thank you so much for joining us here today. I think this was just an incredible discussion. Hope we're gonna have more of these discussions with you. But your time is valuable, and we thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your stories with us here today on behalf of our audience. Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Excellent. And with that, we'll take a minute to thank Nick Findler of Climate Door for this amazing podcast on driving growth for good, unleashing sustainable innovation. And I want to thank our listeners as always, as well, as we can't do what we do without you. So until we meet again with another amazing TBR episode, I'm your host, Ryan Davies. Take care out there.